Recently on this channel, I covered how some bishops have started issuing statements asking the Vatican, hey, why are you focusing on this now never-ending synod, since it's going to go on until 2028 now? Why are you focused on these documents, and why are you focused on all this other stuff? There are very real problems in the church. Lack of belief among the laity across all of Western civilization right now in the belief in the real presence. They just don't believe, not most Catholics. Most Catholics don't go to Mass anymore. Many Catholics stop going to Mass when they reach adulthood. Maybe they come back later. But most stop going. We're seeing a slow rolling apostasy in the church. And yet, we have a meeting about meetings and meetings about the philosophy of meetings going on in Rome, with implementation guidelines for some so-called final document that they just issued that includes things like essentially changing the hierarchical nature of the church and leveling it, making everything equal. And there are real problems in the church that they are ignoring. I'm going to give you a couple of them. Go to CathCon for just one rather spicy example. Got to be careful with how we report on this one. Note the date, July 12th, 2025, yesterday. Headline, priest convicted of possessing indecent movies and images involving the most young, reintegrated into the Vatican Curia. The date, July 12th, 2025. Not 2024, but now, under the new Pope. Carlo Capella, who was convicted of possessing that evil material, has been reintegrated into the Vatican Curia, meaning he's been given a job in the Roman Curia. Because of course he has. He wasn't laicized. Oh, no. That's too much common sense. He wasn't laicized. He wasn't, told, hey, now you've done the secular time you need to do. Now we're going to go send you to these monks to go where you can live a life of prayer, be a member of the community, but they'll be keeping an eye on you. No. Nothing like that. In June 2018, Info Vaticana reported the 5-year prison sentence of priest Carlo Alberto Capella for possession and exchange of evil video and image materials of the most young. Capella, a former diplomat of the Holy See in Washington, of course, was not only extradited, as requested by U.S. authorities, but after his return to Rome, he enjoyed freedom of movement within the Vatican for months before his belated arrest. Today, 7 years later, we discovered that this criminal's reintegration did not consist of caring for his elderly mother in a remote parish, but rather living in San Benedetto, the residence for nuncios, just a few meters from where Pope Leo XIV himself resides. The information, confirmed by an eyewitness who was with him in the last few hours, shows that Capella is not only free, but also protected and probably active in internal tasks. Of what kind? We don't know, but in any case, it doesn't seem that his depraved history has prevented his integration into the clerical circles closest to power. Everything indicates that there is there's reference to the Lavender Group, far from dissolving, continues to grant safe conduct to its fallen members. Capella, 51, who admitted to the evil offense, performed diplomatic duties for the Vatican that took him from India to Hong Kong to the nunciature in Washington. Originally incarnated in the Archdiocese of Milan, Capella was an assistant priest when in 2001, the influential Cardinal Carlo Maria Martini. For those who know your Vatican history, this was the man who was going to be Pope Francis until he got terminally ill and recruited Jorge Mario Bergoglio essentially to fill that role. The inspiration behind the so-called St. Gallen group proposed that he join the Holy See's diplomatic service. The St. Gallen group, to which previous popes owed his pontificate, appears to remain active and in power. And it goes on, and it's talking about how this is kind of weird to be happening right in front of the Pope. If he wants to actually have his actions match his words about reform, this would be a great opportunity to laicize this priest. I won't hold my breath, because I see nothing to indicate that there's any real change afoot. After all, got a bunch of synodality stuff to work on, don't you know? And it's not like there's any real crises facing the church, don't you know? Oh, let me give you an example of another thing. Things that that synodality is distracting the entire church from. This story broke in the English-speaking world on 2 places, Verite Caeli and Zenit. We go to Zenit for this. Headline, in the view of the shortage of priests, diocese grants dispensation from Sunday Mass. Where and under what circumstances? You're about to hear the story of a diocese that has so few priests now, they're just telling regular Catholics don't go to Mass unless you have an easy access to it, dispensing people from their Sunday obligation entirely because of the vocations crisis. Synodality is not going to solve that. Listening and dialogue and inclusion is not going to solve that. What might solve that? Want to know what might go a long ways to that? Kicking the St. Gallen group and the Lavender group out of the Vatican. Kicking those guys out. That might actually help. Because you shatter their networks. You just begin cleaning out the seminaries. Where common knowledge now that a lot of seminaries, if a conservative young man who just wants the Catholic faith enters seminary to be a priest, and he's a little too pious, he prays the rosaries, has a Latin breviary, whatever, old-fashioned things that you would kind of want a priest to do, they might kick him out. I've heard lots of stories from former seminarians about that happening to them or to their friends. From the article, quote, in a bold pastoral response to the mounting priest shortage in the Czech Republic, Archbishop Josef Nuzik of Olomouc has issued a rare dispensation from the Sunday Mass obligation, extending temporary relief to the faithful. What a weird way to phrase this. In remote and underserved areas of the Moravian region. The announcement, delivered in a pastoral letter read across parishes this past Sunday, June 22nd, acknowledges the growing reality that many Catholics are now unable to attend Sunday Mass through no fault of their own. Nuzik, who has led the Archdiocese of Olomouc since February 2024 and was elected president of the Czech Bishops' Conference earlier this year, described the move as a, quote, pastoral help for those who, due to the priest shortage, encounter serious obstacles to fulfilling their Sunday obligation. The dispensation applies in specific circumstances where parishes are unable to offer regular Sunday Mass due to a lack of clergy. In such cases, the Archbishop encourages parishioners to seek out nearby churches offering Mass, attend a Sunday evening liturgy, or participate in a liturgy of the Word led by a deacon when available. Where travel or logistics make these alternatives impossible, especially in rural areas with limited public transport, faithful may fulfill their Sunday obligation through private devotion, family prayer, or participation in Mass via radio, television, or the Internet. The measure will remain in place until December 31st, 2025. End quote. Look, I totally understand the dispensation. Totally understand it. But it's a little weird that we're not having any real efforts to fix this problem coming from Rome. The various dicasteries need to be focused on this instead of the synod. Because the synod is about, listening and dialogue and imposing the new synodal church. That's what it's about. You read the documents and you listen to the leading synodalists out there. They tell you about this new synodal church. Does that new synodal church need priests? Or is this why they want to elevate the laity to doing things at Mass? Is this why some of them push for the ordination of deaconettes? Because there's, in some places, catastrophically few priests. If they don't change this, if they don't fix this problem, the Czech Republic right now is the canary in the coal mine for their rural dioceses. But this is going to come to a diocese near you. In some places, it already has. The United States is filled with these stories of not a lot of people going to Mass anymore, combined with not a lot of priests available. So they start shutting down scores and scores of parishes and designing these parish clusters where one priest goes and offers the sacraments to like 5 different parishes on a Sunday. It's amazing. And instead of trying to fix it, they go with just this absurd listening and dialogue stuff. Instead of trying to fix the problem, they reincarnate priests who were monsters. You have to wonder what it is they believe in Rome. There's more on the details from the Czech Republic. Quote, while canon law remains clear on the significance of Sunday, the day of the resurrection, and a central pillar of Catholic life, Canon 1248 of the Code of Canon Law also allows for alternative expressions of participation when genuine impediments arise. Archbishop Nuzik's letter makes clear that this dispensation is not a license for indifference, but a pastoral accommodation born of necessity. The priest shortage is not a new challenge in Central Europe, but in regions like Moravia, its effects are now being felt more acutely. Many rural parishes, once served by resident priests, have been forced to consolidate or rely on rotating clergy covering multiple communities over long distances. While vocations to the priesthood in the Czech Republic remain modest, the Catholic population, though small, is deeply rooted in local traditions. Many elderly parishioners find it increasingly difficult to travel. You get on, and it goes on and on like this. Why don't they do something? Actually, something. This post-Vatican II experiment, where as soon as the council ended, you start having a crash in vocations. Scores of men left the seminaries. Many men left the priesthood. Many religious women left their convents. It's undeniable. You can see the data. It's out there. It's one of the things a lot of people don't like to talk about. This experimentation of a man-centered expression of Catholicism has got to end. And the synodality is the ultimate end state of that man-centered expression. Where instead of calling for repentance and the gospel of Christ, earlier I talked to you about Bishop Marian Eleganti. Remember his letter? He challenged the synod leaders, meaning the Pope, to, instead of pushing synodality, to preach the gospel of Christ and call souls to repentance. Maybe that'll fix the vocations crisis. Novel idea. I'm curious what you think about all this in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Pray for everybody we spoke about today. We're not trying to make you mad at any of the bishops, any of the priests, the Pope, none of them. This needs to be addressed. This has to be addressed. The synod on synodality needs to stop. Perhaps what they need is a synod of bishops on the vocations crisis. Maybe they need to have a meeting about that, where they look at the raw data. Maybe they need to have a synod of bishops on dealing with monster priests. Probably won't have that happen. Pray for it, though. Who knows? I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.